right, cool. So hold on just a second. We're going to be going live here in just a second. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to bring up the video over here so that way I can see the comments coming in. Now we are reading redirected here, Tammy. All right, so let me just make sure that's okay. Bear me just a second. All right. And you can still hear me okay, right?
I still hear you.
Okay, cool. Good, good, good. And I want to make that. Bear me just a second. And let's get rid of the chat. Boink. Okay. And we're going to get to the comments right here. All right, gotcha. So let's all right, so we got 5 people already, but hold on just a second, Tammy. All right, cool. So I just want to make sure we got the comments kicking in here. I can read it. All right, looks like I'm going to make this a little bit smaller. I'm going to put this for you and me there together. Hey, we got CB in here. Okay, cool. We got, all right, good. We got my man from Connecticut, CB from Michigan. Camo check is CB, right on. All right, so Tammy, let's, while the people are logging in here, let's just bear with me just a second. I'm going to go here, right there. And you are coming in from Florida, is that correct?
That's right. I'm down here on the what we call the Sun Coast of Florida, down on the Gulf Coast near Sarasota.
Okay, gotcha. And where are you native?
Well, I started off in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania for the first 20 years, then got married, moved to Washington, D.C. My husband got a job with the government. I quickly followed and got a job with the government as well. And that's where we stayed ever since until about 2013. Well, actually, no, it's later than that. 2015, we moved down here. We sold our house in 2013 and spent 2 years trying to find a place to retire to. At least my husband retired.
What part of the D.C. area were you in?
We were just a little south of D.C. in Lorton, Virginia, which is about 15 miles south of the city, right outside the Beltway.
And why did you finally decide to move to Florida? You said, hey, you're tired of the commute or something like that, or what?
Number of reasons. When my husband retired, we wanted to move someplace where there was a beach. That was number one consideration because we've always vacationed either on an island or a beach. And my husband hated the Washington, D.C. traffic, which he would probably love it right now with the COVID virus going on. There's no traffic anymore. But we wanted to get away from traffic and also taxes. Pretty tax friendly here in Florida.
No, it's a lot more so than even Virginia. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Hey, folks, if you have questions for Tammy, by all means, ask away. All right, gotcha. And now you said your husband has retired, and you are retired federal government employee as well?
No, I spent 8 years working in the HR office of the FBI in Washington, their headquarters, and I did a little bit of personnel work. I worked in position classification, and I did some data processing in the early days, and then finally I ended up in the retirement office, which was right during the transition from the old federal retirement system, civil service, to the new federal system that we now call FERS. And once we worked through that transition, I started having kids. And so I decided to take a break from federal service and stay home with the kids for a while. But I had started training when I was working at the FBI through this FERS transition. So I got some calls from agencies and a number of companies to come and do some training for them, which I thought was a great way to stay in the business and be able to transition back to working in the personnel shop once the kids were a little older. But that was now 32 years ago, and I haven't transitioned back to the government yet. So I've been doing a lot of training over the years. And I've also done a lot of writing. I write for Government Executive Online magazine. I do a weekly column for them. I do webinars for the National Active and Retired Federal Employees Association. And just about anything in the area of federal benefits. I do personal consulting now as well. Since we've moved to Florida, it really works out well with both doing things like this with clients, one-on-one online or over the phone, I've even had clients visit me here in Florida. They want to move here too.
Yeah.
So I've had a few of them come down to my home office in Florida. I still go to DC to teach about once. I used to go once a month. I haven't been up there since December. I was supposed to go back last month, but obviously everything's been canceled for the in-person stuff. So it's been fun.
When people are, like contemplating retirement from the federal government, they can, they're not really sure what to do. And obviously, the HR units in various companies, and I presume it's the same, if not worse, in the federal government. They say, you got to kind of make all these choices on your own. We can't. Here's a pamphlet. You know what I'm saying? A 45-page pamphlet from the SSA or something like that,
Right.
Social Administration. So they're like, man, what do I do? So that would be someplace they can call you and say, hey, Tammy, I literally don't know what to do here. What's your guidance in this regard? That would be something that you can help with.
Yeah, you understand it pretty good, Josh. That's what has happened in the government, I think, is a number of things. Number one, they have downsized personnel offices, I guess, like everything else, and consolidated them. So where federal employees used to be able to go down the hall and have a cup of coffee and sit down with their retirement specialist, those days have disappeared.
Yeah.
In addition, with this new retirement system, it's like the private sector used to be. It's a three-legged stool. It's got a pension, Social Security is the second piece, and then an employer-sponsored savings plan, of course, we call the TSP. So the agency retirement specialists now can help their employees somewhat with that FERS benefit, and that depends, varies from agency to agency, but they really don't give much help with the TSP or the Social Security piece because that's not their area of expertise. So it's nice when someone can kind of bring all three parts together and help them see that as a whole picture rather than just three separate components that they're trying to figure out how do we make income out of this. So that's what I do.
Because they really, I mean, the guidance that they have is kind of on you to figure this out, Mr. Employee. I mean, it's really, and they don't, I mean, that's and there's a lot of decisions that have to be made. And on top of that, you got a bunch of folks that are, kind of in their ear, like roll your TSP over, don't do, in the military, they got SBP, Survivor Pension Benefit Plan. Do they have that in the federal government for SBP, or is it just Survivor, Joint Life Survivor and stuff like that? How does the, for the federal government work in terms of pension?
That's one of my biggest decision points that I help employees like sort out the pros and cons. So with their basic pension benefit, just like you said with the military, they have SVP. The FERS basic annuity benefit or basic pension benefit, whatever you want to call it, government pension, you have to make a decision. If you're married, the default election is this joint survivor benefit pension, but it takes a 10% cut off the top of your retirement benefit. So if your retirement's $50,000 a year, it goes down to $45,000 if you elect the survivor benefit for your spouse. And on a monthly basis, that's $600 a month. So a lot of people feel like, well, why do we need this, especially in a case where both husband and wife have jobs and will have a pension. In many cases, they're joint federal employees.
Yeah.
And so they can't see the point in why would I need a survivor benefit if I have my own pension? But what they fail to see sometimes is that if there's one of us instead of two of us someday, well, one of those Social Security checks goes away. And if also one of those pension checks goes away, that could leave the other surviving spouse in a pretty bad financial situation. So I try to let them see that, here's what it looks like while there's two of you, and then here's what it might look like when it's just one of you.
And at least they can make the decision a little bit more informed. It's kind of like the SBP, these life insurance salesmen will say, don't take the SBP, just buy a life insurance with the $300 a month you're saving from SBP. And they can make it sound, I mean, it's putting, I don't want to get too vulgar here, but, they can put lipstick on something, you know what I'm saying? It's still going to smell like that something, but sometimes it makes sense on having a life insurance instead of the SBP. A lot of times it does not, in my experience, but sometimes it does. So it's always, at the end of the day, the decision has to be made as long as the, I think the opportunity costs and all the pros and cons are weighed for sure. And I know you get the same thing. I'm just picking on the life insurance people here, but it's no different than rolling a TSP over. There are some reasons it makes sense to do it. Some reasons not, for sure.
Right. Exactly. That's true.
You had just written, you said, in government executive, is that what's called, Tammy, the place you write for?
Yep, govexec.com is the website.
Govexec.com. Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's an online magazine it's for all federal employees. I guess initially it was really touted for government executives, but my audience is a lot of federal employees because we talk about everything pertaining to any pay grade. It doesn't make any difference.
And you had just written an article about the supplemental retirement, or the first sup, is I think is how you said it. Explain that a little bit. That's of interest, absolutely. I know a lot of people, according to Chris Barfield, are confused by that. So, briefly educate us on the first sup, or however you call it.
Yeah. So again, going back to this idea of having a government pension, we call it the FERS pension or the FERS basic benefit. This was designed by Congress back in the 80s to be very comparable to not only a private sector pension model, which is like a three-legged stool, as you know, and then also to be also comparable to the old single benefit civil service plan, which didn't have a savings plan, which didn't rely on Social Security, but it did allow people to retire as young as 55. So under the first system, Congress said, we're going to still let people retire young, only they moved the age up to 57. We're phasing that in even as we speak. So the thing is, if you retire as young as 57, or if you're law enforcement or firefighter, you might be retiring in your early 50s or even late 40s.
Yeah.
So if you're going to take retirement at that young of an age, you're way too young to collect Social Security, which is the third tier of your retirement plan. So Congress included this bridge payment. It's called a FERS supplement or special retirement supplement. Private industry in some cases used to have this. Like my brother worked for BF Goodrich, and they provided him, they called it a bridge payment, which is really what it is.
Exactly, right on, absolutely, yep.
Yeah, so this supplement's still payable. Congress has tried numerous times to take it away. In fact, it's in the president's budget this year to remove it, but that hasn't happened yet. So we continue to have that benefit. So it adds an amount of money onto your pension benefit that will last until you turn 62, which is the age you qualify for Social Security. The supplement can go away earlier because just like Social Security, it's subject to an earnings test. So if you make above a certain limit, which this year is $18,240, so if you start earning a second income, you work after you retire, you're self-employed, you start a business. If that earned income starts going above that $18,240, then you're going to lose $1 for every $2 you go above that limit for the supplement. So, if you go 25,000 over the limit, you're going to lose 12,500 of the supplement, which in many cases pretty much wipes it out, depending on how much it was to begin with.
Oh, I did not know that. So there is an earnings limit on the supplemental, just like there would be for Social Security before full retirement age.
That's right.
So the earnings limit is only on earned income. It's not on distributions from TSP or anything like that. It's just earned income.
That's right. Yeah. So withdrawals from your TSP, your lump sum annual leave payment, things like that wouldn't count against you. It's only if you go back to work, you have a second career, you become self-employed,
right,
then that earned income has to be reported to OPM, or the Office of Personnel Management, and then they determine whether or not they're going to reduce the supplement or eliminate it altogether.
So let me ask you a question on that, Tammy. If, let's say, like, your husband retired and he's got the supplement and he's not working, but you are working, right? You file one joint tax return.
Yep.
Does the first supplement get reduced because of your? It does not. It just has to be him specific.
Individual. Yeah. Yeah. I can make $1 million and he's not working, so he'll continue to get his supplement.
And you are making $1 million.
Oh, of course. Yes. That's why I'm sitting here talking to you tonight.
I think so. How close to the beach are you, by the way?
We're about 10 miles. Takes us about 15, 20 minutes to get there.
Gotcha. You don't mind the humidity in the summertime down there, or do you escape and go back to Pittsburgh?
Yeah, no, I don't really care for the humidity myself, but that's what they make air conditioning for.
Tell us a little bit about the TSP Modernization Act, quote unquote Modernization Act. Just your thought. You can obviously opine on that, but just tell us about the ins and outs there, and then if you have any opinions on that, we'd love to hear them too.
Sure. Well, the TSP, as most people know, is the government's 401k plan. It's the the way that federal employees and military personnel as well can save for retirement on a pre-tax basis. They also have a Roth TSP option where you can save after-tax money, let it grow tax-free. And the TSP, the board, the Federal Retirement Thrift Investment Board, is the body that kind of administers the TSP. It's an independent federal agency. And they did a really good job, I feel, of getting people to save. The savings record of federal employees is really outstanding. And the account value itself, in fact, I wrote it down because I heard the director was on a radio show this week, and he said that the account balance in total of the TSP was, I'll emphasize was, $630 billion. That's well over $500 billion. But it is now, as of March 31st, down to $550 billion as a result of the COVID effect on the markets. And the number of TSP millionaires, which was over 50,000 at the end of the year, we had 50,000, which is a lot for federal employees who don't always work at huge salaries. So we had over 50,000 TSP millionaires, we call them, and we're now down to about 27,000. So these were people who had just passed that $1 million threshold, and then the C fund, which is the S&P 500, the S fund, the small caps, and the international fund, all took a hit in the last month. So
how many millionaires did you have? And now you have 27,000. How many did you have before?
Almost cut in half. It was over 50,000.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So unfortunately,
we had a lot of people right there on the just broke 7 figures, and now they're right back to,
they're right back down to 9, whatever, or 800, whatever they got in there now. So, but anyway, so the TSP did a good job of getting people to save, get people interested in savings and understanding the value and the need to save for retirement. So that part, I think they did a great job. They kept it simple. We only have 5 funds to choose from. You get the life cycle funds if you don't know how to manage your money. But what I think they haven't really focused a lot of attention on, at least not until recently, is the distribution phase. You know, once you've saved all this money, now what do you do with it? So there used to be a very limited number of withdrawal, and there still is sort of a limited withdrawal option, but it's gotten more flexible. So initially you could do a single payment, which meant you could take a one-time partial distribution or all of it if you wanted to. And then that was it. The next time you came back in, you had to take the rest of it. So now under this new rule that took effect in September, you can now take multiple partial distributions. So if I want to take a little bit out now and take a little bit out next year, you know, I can take it, it's my money, I can take it out as I need it. Also, if I take a monthly distribution, I can change that month to month. So if I need more or less money, I can change it from month to month, where initially you can only change it once a year. And also I can take multiple annuities. So if I want to purchase, which right now is not a very popular option because of the age of most federal retirees, and also the interest rates are really low, and it's limited annuity options within the thrift. But having said that, you can still take multiple annuities. I can take some money and purchase one today. 20 years from now, I could purchase another one if I wanted to. So it's kind of eased that up. The one thing that the Modernization Act did not do, which I wish it would have done, but it didn't, was it doesn't let me choose which fund to take the money from. So if I want to take everything from the government security fund, which is the cash option of the TSP, so to speak, I can't do that. I have to take equal portions from the way I'm invested, you know, pro rata portions. So if I'm 40% C fund and 60% G fund, my $1,000 a month is going to come 400 from the C and 600 from the G. So I can't designate which way to take that money out without moving the money around before I take it.
Are there any penalties to move the money around? Or, I mean, can you do that? Like, I move it all, like, because I get this question all the time. I got 50,000 in the C fund, 50,000 in the G fund, and I want to take 10,000 out, which means 5,000 each. So, I mean, can't you just move all that money to the G fund and then, you know, 2 days later move it back the way it was? Is there any penalties for doing that?
You can make as many movements back to G as you want to, but you can only make two interfund transfers per month that move money between the other funds.
Okay, got
So yes, I'm limited to 2 of those per month, unless I'm putting money back in the G fund, and I can do that.
So if you were going to do that, you could go to G fund,
Mhm.
as much as you want, but you can only go back to a non-G fund that's twice over the course of any given month.
That's right.
Okay,
That's right.
let's do
Can't
this.
be a day trader in the thrift.
Understood. And the G fund is explicitly guaranteed. There is no downside risk. It's 100% guaranteed. Is that right, Tammy?
That's right. It's backed, as they say, by the full faith and credit of the U.S. government. So it's treasuries, securities. If something happened to the G fund, we have more to worry about than our retirement, which these days, with the money handing out all this stimulus money today, you begin to wonder where that money's coming from. But instead of paying our taxes today on April 15th, we're getting tax money back
Yeah.
from the heavens.
Some money. We don't know where it's coming.
It's
But the
coming.
G fund, unlike a government bond fund, which has volatility that can lose money. I mean, the Ginnie Mae, for instance, has been down a couple of years. The G fund has never had a down year. Isn't that right?
Nope, they will never will.
Exactly. That's I think a lot of people miss that, because a lot of people. One of the questions I'll ask for this guy, and I answered it, but
Mhm.
he was, and I'll just throw it to you too. You don't have to get too specific if you don't want to, but he says, should I even have the F fund, or should I just kept the G? I'll just tell you, but I said I don't know why you'd have the F fund. At least the G fund has a 100% explicit guarantee that you cannot lose money. You're not going to make much, but there's no risk, where the F fund and all the other funds do have risk there. So you can disagree with me, that's fine, but I want to take a stab at that. And obviously you don't know who this guy is. I get all that, but your thoughts
Yeah.
between, I guess, let me rephrase that. The G fund versus the F, just if you want to tackle that a little bit, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so first of all, I'll say that I'm not a financial planner, so a lot of this is just based on my common sense and experience that I've had with working with the TSP and watching what happens and educating myself about it. But the one thing I have learned to understand was that when the stock market tanks, as it has done recently, bond market tend to work the opposite. It's almost like an opposite reaction. So the F fund right now is doing the best out of all 5 funds.
Really?
So I
The
guess
F fund?
the F fund has been the one that's been consistently above the green line. It hasn't gone into red this year. So that could be a reason why some people use the F, because sometimes if you're getting a 20% loss in your C fund, at least the F fund might be getting a 8 or 10% gain, or whatever the case may be.
Okay.
So that could be it, because the G fund, as much as it's safe and it's never going to have a negative return, it's never going to have a 20% return either. It's never going to go that high. It's going to be a little above the rate of inflation usually. And, right now it's very low because interest rates in general are very low. So yeah, I think the F fund maybe has a place there. And I think if you're going to be well diversified, I guess you could put some money, maybe a small portion, in the F fund to help offset some of the volatility of the other funds.
The G fund acts like a stable value fund for, like other, or guaranteed investment contract for some of these 401k firms. That's what it looks like to me. That's why I like it, just because the G fund it's just not sexy. But in times like this, man, we don't want anything sexy. And I didn't realize the F fund was actually in the green. That's actually good to know. I literally have not checked. I don't know.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was going to take a quick look to see what it's doing right now. Let me see if I can find it for you.
Absolutely. So that's good stuff. Now, while you're looking it up, Tammy, so the drawback of the benefit of the TSP has always been the low fees, but now everyone has low, Schwab, Vanguard, hell, I think even Fidelity's offer no fee ETFs and stuff like that. And that gives a competitive advantage, some lesson for the TSP. The biggest drawback that I can see, I am not an expert on the TSP, is for spousal beneficiaries and non-spousal beneficiaries too. It's just there's some limitations there that the TSP has that IRAs don't have. You want to? Look. I didn't ask you this in advance, so I might be. But you want to?
I'm good on the fly.
Yeah, exactly. Because that is always. It always ticks me off. I'm like, the TSP is but it's hard to recommend people keeping the TSP when they can go to Schwab and get free ETFs now with the beneficiary restrictions that are just horrible. You want to tackle that a little bit?
Yeah, before I do, I'll give you an update on the G and the F fund. So for the last 12 months ending March, the F fund is up 8.84%. The G fund, the ever safe G fund, is up 1.97%. So like I said, when the stocks are down, because for the year, the C fund, the S&P is down 7% for 12 months. Of course, the month of March, it was down 12.4%, and year to date down 20%, but for the last 12 months down 7%. And the S fund, which is the small cap, is even worse. It's down 20% for the last 12 months, and the international is down 14%. So yeah, the F fund would give somebody a little balance to that. You know, I'm sure most people don't have a lot of money in the F fund. Like you said, it's not the place you want to be because it has volatility as well, and it's not as safe as the G fund. But yet, in times like this, it can balance some of that risk that people feel.
Absolutely, diversification. Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. So going to your question about, now I forgot your question.
The beneficiary and
that's right. Yeah.
The BPA accounts, the beneficiaries, and then the non-spouse beneficiaries. It's just there's some roadblocks there that the TSP has that and IRAs don't have. I just want to see if you have any thoughts on that by chance.
Yeah, so give you an example. This came from a friend of mine who works with a lot of federal clients. He's a financial advisor. He had a client who had about a $750,000 balance in his TSP account, and the client passed away. So his widow, of course, inherited the money, and the TSP automatically puts that inheritance for a widow only into what they call a spousal, it's not even called spousal, it's called a beneficiary participant account. But only a surviving spouse can have that. So it went directly into that account. And the nice thing about that, I think the reason why they do this is a good reason, so that the surviving spouse, in her grief and getting through the death of her husband, she doesn't have to make any quick decisions. That money sits there. It's all put into one of the life cycle funds, which is a target fund for her age. So they kind of spread it between those 5 different investment options for her automatically. If she wants to leave it there, she can take advantage of the same monthly withdrawal options or buy an annuity or whatever she wants to do, the same as her husband could have done in that case. So that went in there. About 6 months after he passed away, she died.
Oh.
Yeah, so this happens. They were older. So she passed away pretty quick, and they had 3 children who inherited all this money. So the kids couldn't leave the money in the beneficiary account because that's strictly for the widow. So the financial advisor wanted to have them set up these inherited IRA accounts so they wouldn't have to pay the tax on the money all at once. Well, he kept trying to send in the forms to the TSP to move this money to the inherited IRA, and the TSP kept rejecting it. He couldn't figure out what's going on, and he finally found out that you can't do that. So the beneficiaries of those beneficiary accounts have to pay the tax on the money. So there was no way to transfer that money to the kids where they could spread the tax burden over a number of years. Now, I know that the new law that passed recently made some changes, and I don't know, because the TSP hasn't put much up on that yet, as far as will that alleviate that problem at all? I don't know. I don't know if you've heard anything.
I have read literally nothing on that. And it takes, because this is a pet peeve of mine. There's the beneficiaries of the BPA accounts are screwed. There's no 2 ways around that because they get a lump sum distribution. And the Modernization Act, which was passed in 2017, there's been no writings that I could find on this.
No, it wasn't in the Modernization Act. I can tell you that. I don't know if it was in the Secure Act that passed in December. Or something in the CARES Act. I don't know. I don't think so, because I haven't heard anything about it.
I hadn't heard it. It wasn't a Modernization Act, and I would be stunned if it was in the Secure Act and then the CARES Act. But anyway, so the point there is that these kids had to pull, $700,000 out. They just got one lump sum because it's not an inherited IRA. It is literally a
taxable distribution.
It's a BPA, which is not it's a beneficiary participant account. It is not it's like a completely new thing. It's just crazy. And the irony of it all is if the widow had died before the husband did, just use this for an example, the husband died, the husband is still alive, his wife dies, and he leaves it to his 3 kids, they can then roll it to their own inherited IRAs. It's the beneficiary of the BPA. It's like,
that's right.
It's nuts. It's nuts. It's a pet peeve of mine that I don't
get. It doesn't make any sense. I asked the TSP about it, and they said it's an IRS rule, so they really have no control over it. but I don't know.
Who actually, so on the people who actually run the TSP, are they like investment managers? Are they government employees? Who are these people? Do you know? I have no idea.
Yeah, there's a board. The TSP has a board, and they're made up of people from the financial world. They have a director who's the director of the TSP, and he's a federal employee, but the board members are from all different areas. I think there's, I want to say 5 board members, don't quote me on that, but they're called the Federal Retirement Thrift Investment Board. And all the people who work at TSP headquarters, they're federal employees, just like I was, just like my husband was. And they just do the day-to-day operations of the thrift. The finance part of the thrift, the record keeping, that's all contracted out. They use BlackRock as their investment company for the different funds. There's the National Finance Center does all the record keeping, and they have a call center that's contracted out. So a lot of the work's contracted out, but it's funded through forfeited contributions and through the administrative cost of running the thrift, which is still relatively low because of the sheer size. You know, it's over half a trillion dollars in value, with like I want to say 5 million participants now, because they've added the active duty military to the program. So it's just huge. It's as far as I know, the world's largest employer sponsored savings plan.
It's gigantic, and everyone needs to understand that, because it's a huge benefit. And now with the new BRS rules on the blended retirement system for the military, they need to be more aware of the TSP as well. Because before, like, I mean, I served 4 years as a private Joe Snuffy, Tammy. If you would have told me the TSP, I would have said I have no clue what you're talking about. You know what I'm saying?
That's right.
But now there's actually matching and things. All right, so let's go through some questions if you don't mind. I got my man Starling from Hawaii. He says, question: what is the biggest mistake that federal employees make before they retire? Anything that jumps out at you? And by the way, I have a little puppy dog, a Chiweenie. My wife and kids just got back from taking him for a walk, so he might join us.
That's good. That's a good thing about working from home.
Yes.
And this is so great with this kind of crisis situation we're in. We're now seeing all the movie stars and rock stars at home. So I don't feel so bad working from home anymore. Everybody's doing it. It's the in thing.
Well, the cool kids are doing, Tammy. We're working from home.
Yeah. Well, we've always done. They're just starting to join us. But so the biggest.
So do you have any pets, by the way? Do you have any pets there? Any dogs that might join you?
Just a husband. Yeah, no, I had a cat, and the cat died. And we travel too much right now that it wouldn't be fair to the cat. So I volunteer at the Cat Depot. It's a nice cat rescue here in Sarasota. But anyway, so there's a lot of things that people misunderstand about their federal retirement. I think that leads them to make mistakes, or to not know what to ask, or not know where to look, or what have you. So it just depends, varies. I don't know that there's one overriding mistake that people make. I just think that there's a lot of little things that you can do, because every time I work with a client, my goal in my mind when I take on a client is to find something that they didn't know before that's going to make them more money.
Yes.
Just something that they're entitled to in the first place, but if they didn't know about it or didn't know to ask about it, anything from, like, you served in the military, right? So a lot of military veterans in the government who spent time, got their college degree at one of the service academies, like West Point or Annapolis or Air Force Academy. Some people don't know that's 4 years of active duty, so they can count that time towards their federal retirement. And sometimes it's overlooked. Or I've even had people tell me their benefits specialist at the agency tells them, oh, don't worry about that, it's not worth anything. Well, hey, 4%, that's what it's worth, 4% of your average salary at retirement. So if your salary at retirement is $100,000, that's $4,000 a year added to your benefit, just for saying, oh, by the way, I served at the academy.
For the rest of your life.
For the rest of your life, with a cost of living adjustment on top of it. So, things like that, not knowing what counts as part of your federal service record, because the way it works, it's your service times your salary times the percentage is your retirement. That's how they calculate your pension. So the more service, the better. If you have 20 years versus 25 years, you're going to get a lot more money. So making sure that you're getting credit for everything you've done, and know how to ask for that, and know whether or not sometimes you have to pay for it. Like with military service, they call it making a military deposit. So you have to know the value of why they're asking you to pay this money, because it's definitely worth paying. And that's one thing. We talked about survivor benefits.
Right.
And like I said, there's a lot of folks who make an error of underestimating the value. You were mentioning about insurance, because this is one of my pet peeves, especially with law enforcement, because they tend to retire kind of young, 50s, early 50s. And they always get in touch with this, somebody at church or somebody in the neighborhood selling insurance saying, hey, I can sell you $1 million policy that will take the place of that survivor benefit. It's going to cost you a lot less money.
Yeah.
Well, my first question is, what kind of insurance is it? Because there's only two kinds. There's whole life and term.
Right.
Oh, it's term. That's why it's so cheap. It's like, okay, what's the term? 20 years.
Right.
All right. So you bought that when you're 50. The term is up when you're 70. So what happens then?
Right.
And then they tell me, well, by that time the house will be paid off, the kids will be grown. I won't, my wife or my husband, usually it's my wife, won't need money anymore. Right. I'm like, oh, really? And I'm 62 right now, so I know when I'm 70, I'm still going to need money if I'm still around. So that's what he does. Oh, and then they say, well, it's renewable. Yeah. So try renewing $1 million at 70. So I find so many flaws in their understanding, because it's omissions that the insurance salesman may not have told them, or maybe they didn't listen when they were hearing that conversation. Where the survivor,
they'll say, you invest the rest. You know what I'm saying? But that always is an afterthought. And look, not everybody needs the SBP. I mean, if your spouse is going to die before you, most likely, don't get the SBP. If your spouse is 15 years older and he or she's got, freaking lung cancer, don't get it. But other than that, there's a lot of benefits to having the SBP for sure.
If I was retiring, oh, there comes the dog. If I was retiring, my husband would not need an SBP, because I spend everything I make plus most of what he makes as well. So if my husband lost me, he would certainly miss me, I would hope, but he would get a pay raise.
And the SBP stops like when you're 70, right? Or 30 years or something like that. What is it?
No, that's the military.
The premium on the SBP, that stops at like, what's that?
Not in the government, not in the civilian side. That's only on the military side.
Okay, but for the military side though, you stop paying the insurance part of it, like when you're 70 or
I think it's 30 years. I don't know. Yeah, something like that. But I wish it was that way in the civilian, but it's not.
But there's a defined stop date for the military for SBP, where, like you said, on the civilian side, there's not. Yep. That's pretty good. And so a lot of people that don't even know what they don't know when they need someone like you to help them. One guy asked, I think Herbert, says, do you help people who've already retired, Tammy, or just people who are about ready to retire?
Both. I'm surprised that I do get clients who have already retired, because, as I said, very cute. How are you doing? What's his name?
Pablo the dog.
Pablo. Yeah. Hi, Pablo.
He runs this show, even though he's only 13 pounds. He's the
boss.
He's the boss, right? It goes Pablo, the wife, everybody else got 4 kids, and then me. I'm classic.
That's why you're in the basement. So I do help retirees. In fact, a lot of my work with NARF, the National Active and Retired Federal Employees, has taught me a lot about the needs of retirees. Sometimes it's the fact that somebody retired from the government, went back to work someplace, so they didn't take anything out of their thrift yet. They didn't touch Social Security yet. So now they're trying to figure out, what do I do next? I stopped working this second career. Should I start my TSP withdrawal? Should I start Social Security at the same time? Should I wait for one versus the other? So I'll help people weigh the pros and cons of those decisions. I try not to make decisions for anybody. I try to explain things so that they can make a decision, because I think most of us are smart. Most of the people I deal with are brilliant, actually. Yeah. I'm in awe of some of their expertise. These people work for the VA or NASA or IRS. Any of these agencies, you have to be pretty bright. But when it comes to these benefits, no one can explain it to them. There's no one-stop shop to get the information. So they need someone to help them weigh the decision process out, to help them see the pros and cons of one decision over the other. And the other thing I help a lot of retirees with is to weigh out what to do about Medicare. Because unlike most people, most companies, if you work for a private sector company, when you retire, if you don't take Medicare, you lose the insurance and it's done. If you don't have insurance from your company, you have to get a Medicare supplement or Medicare Advantage plan or something like that. But with federal employees, it's always been different. Federal employees have had federal health benefits. That's a lifelong benefit when they retire. They never lose it. So when they turn 65, they've paid into Medicare during their federal career, but they're not required to enroll in it when they turn 65, which is the weirdest thing. So when they turn 65, they say, well, I've had this good federal health insurance for 40 years. Why in the world do I need to add Medicare Part B and pay another $144.60 a month for something I already have? So I help them, again, weigh the pros and cons of what do I get out of adding Medicare Part B as opposed to just continuing with my federal health insurance the way it is. So the one thing you have to understand is that even though they can't make them enroll, the federal health plans cannot require, they can't drop you if you don't enroll. So what I tell the employees and the retirees is that who do you think benefits from you taking Medicare Part B? Because once you take Medicare Part B, if you're retired, Medicare becomes the primary payer of your doctor bills, your lab work, your physical therapy, your outpatient hospitalization, all of that comes under Medicare Part B. So your federal health plans are like, yes, we're so glad you turned 65. We can't make you take Medicare, but we want you to. So they generally will offer incentives. They'll offer an incentive such as you no longer have to meet your deductible. We'll take care of that. So if you normally had a $700 deductible, it's waived. We no longer charge you co-insurance. When you go to the doctor and it's $300 and you normally have to pay 15%, we'll waive that. So it ends up that when a federal employee combines Medicare with a federal health plan, in many cases, there's a lot of different health plans to choose from, so you have to choose the right one. But with that right combination, they get a statement when they go to the doctor that says Medicare paid 80%, your health plan paid 20%, and you pay nothing except that $144.60 a month for Medicare Part B. So you are paying an extra premium, but you can change your health plan because every federal employee has at least 20, if not 35, different health plans to choose from, depending on where they live and where they worked. So there's a huge group.
I did not. Yeah. So they don't need to get a supplemental policy then, right? I mean,
no, they just stay in the federal health program, just choose a plan that works really well with Medicare. And there's plenty of them that do.
All right. So if you're a federal employee and you get off the federal employee as a primary payer, so you go to Part B. I mean, obviously Part A is already free. Part B. Then you definitely don't need a Medicare Advantage. You don't need a supplemental policy. Do you still need a Part D as a prescription drugs in there?
No. So with Part D, which is, like you said, the drug part of Medicare, your federal health plans cover prescriptions as well and usually better than a Part D plan.
Right. Understood.
So therefore, you can waive the Part D. There's no incentive to get people to sign up for Part D. In fact, if you decide when you're 90 that you want to pick up a Part D plan, there's no penalty for late enrollment as long as you've had the federal health plan all along. So the only one that you really have to make a decision on at 65 or at retirement if you're already 65 is Part B. And so if you don't take Part B, there's a penalty for late enrollment.
So the worst case scenario for you is the Part B premium, the $145 a month right now. That's literally it.
Well, there's another thing. Yeah, so the other catch, and this is becoming more and more of a problem, especially for these $1 million TSP accounts, at least they used to be $1 million before the end of the year. Right. So when you're having a very nice pension, you've got a pension, you have Social Security, you have withdrawals from your thrift, and then there might be two of you, you and your spouse each have those three sources of income. You're going to be affected by Aunt Irma, the income-related Medicare adjusted premium. So if you have to pay more than $144.60 a month, you might be paying over $300 a month per person. Now we're talking real money. And again, you go back to that same argument, why do I need this if I already have good health insurance? My opinion on that, and I do give people my opinion on this one because I don't think we can see that far ahead. At age 65, fortunately, most people are feeling pretty good still.
Yeah.
You know, we can, 65, I guess, is the new 55, who knows, or 45, hopefully. So, so I think that people have to realize that at 65, you might have another 40 years on the clock. And a lot can happen over those next 40 years. You know, people, it's not uncommon to see somebody who lived 105 today. You know, years ago, it used to be rare. Now we see it all the time. And so you have to think in terms of what could those out-of-pocket expenses be over time, over and over again? And is your income always going to be as high as it is right now? Maybe you're still working that second career. Maybe you're taking more out of your thrift now, so you don't have to take as much out later. You know, there could be all kind of reasons why you got to rethink that logic. Rather than just think about what's happening this year, think about what might happen 10, 20 years out in the future.
But if you stay on the federal plan, you don't get penalized for enrolling in Part B, like when you're 70, 60, 69 years old or 70 or something like that.
You do.
Okay, gotcha.
You do. Yeah, it's only Part D. Okay. Yeah, Part D, you're not penalized. Part B, you have to make that decision. And then, like, you know, every 12 months you delay it, there's a 10% permanent surcharge on the premium.
You want to see something cute, Tammy? Look at this guy.
Oh,
he had his head on the table sleeping. Then he.
Was I boring you? I'm sorry.
No, I just my heart is. I guess my belly's kind of soft and kind of big. It's just putting him to sleep. It's like, oh, look at him. There he goes.
There he goes. He looks like a 2-year-old when he's eating too much.
Just had his head on the table, like going up. CB says SBP 55%. Yes. It's
well, it depends. Yes. Okay. So like I said, we still have 2 retirement systems in the government. We have the old system, which we still have some. About 4% of the population is CSRS. And the new system, which is now 95% of the population, is FERS. So the FERS system has a 50% survivor benefit. So using an example of, let's say my FERS retirement's $50,000 a year, I'm going to take a 10% reduction if I'm married. So that's going to take me down to $45,000 a year. If I die first, my spouse is going to get 50% of the $50,000 of the unreduced benefit.
Of the $50,000.
Yes, and that's what it's worth if I die the year I retire. Okay. Hopefully I'm going to live another 30 years. So at that point, all the cost of living adjustments has increased that 50,000 to maybe 100,000. Then it'll be 50% of that amount at the time of my death.
So it's not 50% of the reduced amount, it's 50% of the I did not see that. That's a big deal.
It is. Yeah, it is. And the other thing I think people don't realize is that 10% reduction is not a withholding. So if my retirement goes from 50,000 down to 45,000, now I pay income tax on 45,000, not 50. Yeah. So that $5,000 reduction is not part of my taxable income anymore, which is another savings while I'm alive.
Okay.
So yeah, I think people do underestimate the value and overestimate the cost of that election. Very
yeah, I completely agree. Mm-hmm. Let's see. Tammy Derry says, when I retire, I'll be 60 and a half with 21 years and 2 months, 21 years and 2 months in December 2021. Will this be a 1% or a 1.1% retirement? And I don't even know what that means. Any idea?
Yes. Okay. So under FERS, the calculation, like I mentioned before, it's your length of service times your salary times a percentage. So for most FERS calculations, it's 1%. Like in his case, 20 years and 2/12 of a year, 2 months, times, let's say his high threes, 100,000 times 1% would give him a little over 20,000 a year retirement benefit. But if he had been 62, or if he continues working until he's 62, once you hit the magic age of 62 and you have at least 20 years of service, then the calculation goes to 1.1%, which is a 10% bonus. So that's an incentive, I guess, to stick around till you're 62. And not only that, but by the time you're 62, you'll get Social Security, which is usually worth more than the supplement. So I think FERS was set up to get people to work till they're 62. If you ask me what Congress was thinking.
If he retires at 60 and a half, he should we don't know his situation, but just presumably it could be worth it for him to wait for another year and a half to stay till he's 62. Then he'll get a 10% bump in his retirement.
if nothing else, have him get 2 estimates from his personnel office or his HR office. Say, can you run me an estimate for when I want to retire, and run me another one just for grins and when I'm 62, and he'll see a pretty significant difference, which might encourage him to stay a little bit longer.
Interesting. And they can do that. They can run both estimates.
Sure.
Okay. Doug says, no big deal, but something I'm curious about is bailout of the post office. I've read the White House is against it. I don't understand. I don't know anything about the bailout. Do you know anything about bailouts for the post office or anything, or even?
Well, what we all know is that the post office is a business that is really changing because of Amazon and because of FedEx and
exactly.
everything else that's going on. So Congress for a number of years now has had legislation that they're trying to push through called a postal reform bill. It's a huge piece of legislation to try to figure out how we're going to save the post office. You know, it's one of our American institutions, and they're trying to find every which way. Anywhere from changing their health plans to changing how much money they pay for retirement to pulling them out of it, all kinds of things. Nothing on that has happened yet, so I can't estimate or guess what might happen, but I know there's a lot of problems there, you know, a lot of financial issues. The post office is running out of money quickly because, especially now, everything's in crisis mode. So I can't help them understand that. I would say become a member of NARF, because they're watching that legislation quite closely, because NARF, not only do they help federal employees understand their benefits, but the National Active and Retired Federal Employees Association is a huge lobby, and they're on Capitol Hill. I don't know if they're still on Capitol Hill every day, but generally they are lobbying congressmen and trying to sway people on the side of understanding the federal employee and retirees perspective on things. They've been very successful.
I was down there the other day just mailing some stuff, and I was talking to this guy, and it was interesting because we just got to chat. He's a worker, and it was interesting because he said, you know, I said, how's business? And we just got chatting. He said, you know, if they ever stopped delivering mail, that would be, you know, that would not be a good thing for the country. And I said, I agree with that 100%. I mean, we're so used to seeing your local mail carrier. My wife's brother literally carried the mail in Dale City for many years. You know what I'm saying? And it's interesting. I said, you know, I never thought about it like that, but that is such a ingrained part of Americana that if that were to go away, I think we'd lose something there. And you know, look, I don't know what the solution is, but I hope that is looked at. I literally have no political opinion on this at all. Just I hope they don't just look at it like Amazon. It's not Amazon. It's the Postal Service. This is part of our established culture. And you know, sometimes you got to take one for the team, which means even if they're losing money. I mean, I know we've been doing it for a while. I don't know the answer. I just I'd hate to see the Postal Service go away. That would be. I don't think that'd be a good thing for the country. That's for sure.
Yeah, there's a lot to it. So yeah, it's something that I've tried to look at from time to time. You know, I've heard some people talk about it. It's a sad story, so we'll have to wait and see what solutions they can come up with. Hopefully, it'll be something.
Derek says, is high 3 based on salary or plus locality or just base salary?
I get that question all the time, and I answer yes. And the reason why is because basic pay is, if a federal employee looks at their leave and earnings statement, which is like their pay stub, or if they look at their personnel action statements, which is a document that's in their personnel folder, it's going to say, here's your basic pay with locality. So your basic pay is adjusted to reflect the locality pay for where you work. So we have a lot of different locality stations throughout the country. You know, the Washington, D.C. metro area, there's Los Angeles, there's rest of the U.S., which takes care of everybody in between those large metropolitan areas. And so your base pay includes locality pay. So I tell people, if you really want to maximize your retirement for the last 3 years of your career, go work in San Francisco or take a job in New York City, and your locality pay will go up, and that's part of your high 3.
That's interesting. That's when I worked at USAA, they moved me from San Antonio to Philadelphia. They gave me like a 15% bump in pay. And then when I'm in Atlanta, Tammy, when I came down here, they did not take away that bump in pay. So I was getting Philadelphia wages in Atlanta, which was, pretty
cool. Awesome. Yeah, that's what you want. Yeah,
of course, they since closed the office. So that might have been one of the reasons why they did. They're paying me too much. Why can't they take out state taxes when you retire? I don't know. Is that true? They can't take out state taxes?
Well, it depends what you're talking about. So from your FERS benefit or civil service retirement, they can withhold state taxes. They just don't withhold it until OPM finalizes your retirement.
Okay.
So if you live in Virginia, if you live in Georgia, wherever you live in retirement, you contact your state tax office and you can either set up, you can always set up estimated payments if you have to pay a state tax. But in most cases, OPM has an agreement with that state tax office to withhold the state tax. So generally, you can arrange to have state tax withheld, but you have to wait until your retirement benefit has been finalized. Now, the TSP, when you take payments from your thrift, you might owe state tax on those payments as well. However, the TSP so far has not started to withhold any state tax. They only withhold federal.
Vanguard is like that. I remember in USA when I used to work there, and I think even Schwab, they could not. I remember I had one guy who was really angry. It's through Vanguard. I said, I don't know what to tell you, man. That Vanguard has no agreement or whatever it was, some kind of authority to withhold state taxes. I forgot what state he was in, probably California. But I said, hey, we can't do it. Even if we wanted to, we can't. There's no license or agreement. So it's interesting that TSP has the same thing. And that was the first time I ever heard that. I said, oh, you can't withhold state taxes. And he was really angry. I said, all the things to be angry about, that would be a
minor one. Yeah, the Social Security obviously is tax-free in most states, but there are 13 states that tax Social Security. And as far as I know, there's no state tax withholding from Social Security checks either, even in the states where it's taxable. So you just have to set up an arrangement with your state tax office to pay estimated taxes. Or for federal retirees, they can just have more state tax withheld from their annuity, their pension check, that'll offset.
Any gotchas with Vera with respects to the federal employee health benefit, supplemental annuity, and normal FERS annuity amount? Whew, it's a lot.
A lot of acronyms there.
Yeah, right. This is military and government work for sure.
That's for sure. Do you know what Vera stands for?
Voluntary employee something. No, okay.
No, you got the first one right. Voluntary. It's Voluntary Early Retirement Authority, which is another word. It's another way of saying early out.
I thought it was the lady from Cheers. Remember Vera from Cheers?
Oh, yeah, Vera. Yeah, so we don't see a lot of this anymore. We saw a lot of it during the 90s when the Defense Department was closing bases and there was a lot of military downsizing. We saw a lot of it even in the early part of this decade, in the early part of 2000s, where you saw some agencies losing budget money, so they were downsizing. They were offering employees early retirement just to reduce the payroll. And I guess there's still pockets of it from here to there. You know, the Postal Service would be one that maybe is still offering buyouts because another way to save money is to reduce their staff, although I don't know how much leaner they can get. But anyway, so if an agency offers you a buyout, or not a buyout, but an early out, they might also offer you a buyout. You know, if they don't think they're going to get takers for the early out, they can give you an incentive money and say, we'll pay you to go. Now, the problem is when the government pays someone a buyout, it's not like Microsoft paying you a buyout of $500,000. The government will pay you $25,000 at most, unless you're DOD, the Department of Defense. They can offer you up to $50,000, which is still not much after taxes. That's a taxable payment. And then if you end up figuring out that once you've retired, you can't afford it, and you try to go back to the government, you got to pay the buyout back with the money you paid in taxes. So you want the whole $25,000 back if you go back within 5 years. So you better be sure that you're ready to go before you accept that buyout, because it's very painful to have to pay that back if you get rehired. And then you're considered a reemployed annuitant, which means you have to work another 5 years to have your whole retirement recalculated. Otherwise, you're just going to get a little supplement or stipend added on to the retirement you already had. So yes, you got to be careful. I remember very early on in my career when I started teaching, one of my first assignments was to go to the Navy Department. This was in the early 90s when they just started the downsizing. And I had to talk to 500 federal employees who were being offered an early out. And man, it was like a carnival atmosphere. Everybody's coming in, dancing, we're getting early out, this is so great. And then I started telling them what it's worth. You know, you're 48 years old, you got 25 years of service, you're only going to get 1/4 of your paycheck, and that's before taxes. You know, can you live on a 75% pay cut? No. Well, then that means you got to go find another job. Who's going to hire you because your skills are in DOD?
Right.
So they got a rude awakening to realize that unless you have another job lined up, or
Yeah.
unless you're already ready to retire, you've been planning to
Right.
retire, then it might make sense. So yeah, I think you got to really do your planning carefully if you're going to accept an early out offer, and realize that that buyout is really not as much money as it sounds like. You know, if you were planning to work another 10 years, I would say keep working, keep working unless you have a good job ready to go.
Oh man, that's oof. Rents, that is non-earned income. Vinyl Earthlink, that's rent is non-earned income, so that won't count against your
yeah, if you have rental property, it doesn't count against you. But if you're a realtor, then you got to be careful because that's your earned income.
1099, your self-employed income too.
Yeah.
So anytime you're exactly earned income. Tammy, when will the L2025 fund and other 5-year funds become active?
I heard just today that that's this summer, probably around July.
Okay.
They're going to have 5-year incremental funds going up to 2065. So you'll have 2025, 2030, 2035, all the way up to 2065. As of July, you'll also see the L2020 fund disappear because this is 2020 this year. This is the target date for that fund. So when those target date funds disappear, they don't really disappear because your money's in them. So the money goes to the L income fund, which is managed for people who are living out retirement. So it's very heavily invested in G and F, a little bit in F, a lot in G, and the remainder in the CS and I. So the L2065 fund will be over 95% CS and I and less than 5% G fund. I don't think anything hardly in the F. So it's going to be a full circle tilt, you know, over the next 45 years, you know, which is basically a new employee's full career.
Hey, you can annuitize a TSP too, though, right?
You mean once you retire? Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'm just curious. So have you compared like an annuity through the TSP, an income annuity I'm talking about, versus like a private annuity? Are they comparable, or the TSP annuities much better, or what's I don't know what the payout percentages are, but any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so the annuity option of the TSP, it's a single premium annuity. So it's not a variable annuity. The interest rate index that's used to calculate the benefit is fixed for life. So this is not the time in fact, let me check right now since we got the website open. I'll tell you what the annuity interest rate index is right now. It's probably not very pretty.
Probably 2%, if that, I imagine.
Oh, I'll bet it's lower. Yeah, I'll bet it's lower. Really? Yeah, so if you buy, so you're actually buying an annuity, right? Because you're taking money from your TSP account, you're giving it to MetLife because that's the contractor that holds the annuity option.
Okay.
So let's see, if I take $200,000, so $200,000, buy an annuity at age 62. I'm 62, I'm gonna take my annuity, and I plan to live to be 110, so put that in there. All right, let's try to get to the final page here.
Thanks. Ooh, stinky breath, Bravo. Stinky breath.
God. You got doggy breath.
Yes, he does.
Okay, here we go.
And MetLife is one who's in. Do they send you a statement in MetLife, or does it still come through the TSP? Is it like actually?
No, TSP washes their hands of you once you buy this annuity. So yeah, the interest rate index right now is 1.7%. So it's under 2%. That would be fixed for the life of the annuity.
Which
so
is. Go ahead.
Yeah. So if I took my 200,000, bought a life annuity for a single life, just on my lifetime, let's add a cash refund. So if I die early, whatever's left of my 200,000 goes to my beneficiary. At age 62, that would get me about $800 a month for the rest of my life, but it would be $800 a month today and $800 a month 25 years from now. So it never changes. Now, if I wanted it to go up to offset inflation, it would go down to about $580 a month. And then I could get up to a 3% inflation adjustment every year. That's if inflation was running 3% a year. If it was running less than that, I would get less of an inflation. So it's a very limited
that's
set
ugly.
of features. It's not pretty right now, no.
Did you say it was $800 a month on a single life annuity at someone 62 years old for $200,000?
That's right.
All right, so folks, what we do is we take 800 times that by 12, divide that by $200,000, and our payout rate there is 4.8% on a 62-year-old for a single life. That's crap. That's bad. Don't do that. I just
No.
that's
and unfortunately nobody is. Yeah, it's very. I think the people who do it don't understand what they did, and that's the sad thing. I had an email from a guy the other day who was trying to take out monthly payments from his thrift. And you get to a certain part of the application. It's an online application, so called a wizard. So they only ask you the questions that they need to ask you. And he got to the page that was getting spousal consent, because if you're married, your spouse has to consent to your election. And the way he understood what it read, it says if you're married, your spouse is entitled, which they are, to a joint life annuity. Now it goes on to say if you don't want this, print this form out, go to a notary, have your spouse sign it.
Right.
Well, he thought he had to do that. He almost elected the annuity by default. It's like, no, you just have to print out the form and take it to the bank and get it notarized, get your spouse to sign off, because that's the default election if you're married, is the joint annuity.
Yeah, don't. I'd have a hard time recommending that, folks. Just be careful there. That's actually I did a video or just today, Tammy, talking about. Look, I like single premium annuities. I'm a fan of them, but in today's market, no way. Just because what we just said. I mean, I took my trusty calculator, and that's bad.
If interest rates start and go back up like 5, 6, 7%, now we'll talk annuities.
Was that based on your gender, or was it gender non-specific?
No, non-specific.
Okay, so in that case, you as a
female
did die earlier, so they would get more. Yes, that's not
yeah.
good. All right.
Wouldn't matter.
Let's see what other questions we have. You got a couple more minutes? You up against?
Oh yeah, whatever. I'm here.
Hello, Tammy. Oops, someone said hello. Hold on a second. Hold on, missed it. I went down. I got to find out here. Okay, we are. All right, there you go. So Herbert, hello, Tammy. Thanks for all your work. I've been reading your articles and webinars on the NARF. He's going to retire October. He just retired 2019 October at 57 years old. And he's the guy who said, you still work with federal retirees after they retire. Okay.
Yeah.
The answer to that, Herbert, is yes. And it looks like you know how to contact Tammy. So by all means do so. We'll put links in the show notes on all her contact. My man Prairie Mark, why 5 years to get my FERS annuity started? All the forms in my packet filled out correctly. Hundreds of hours wait time on hold for OPM phone calls. They made me cry. I called every 2 weeks. I'm not. Why 5 years to get? I'm not sure what he's asking. Do you know what he's asking by chance, or no?
No. I do know that it is hard to get a hold of almost anybody over the phone if you're trying to call a government organization. But OPM has been kind of notorious for the long wait times when you try to call and get information. So my suggestion is, if you're calling OPM, call early in the morning. Call them around 7:30 in the morning. You might get through a lot quicker. Yeah, call before the other retirees wake up.
Yeah, because they're out in Florida.
It doesn't take 5 years to get your first check, though. Maybe it takes 2 or 3 months. Not 5 years.
When did the federal government change the employee contribution rate for FERS? And how does one know the appropriate rate that should be coming out of their pay? That's a tough one. But do you know when the federal government changed their employee contribution rate for FERS?
I do. Yeah. So, and this is kind of an interesting story. So when FERS started, remember that was back in the 80s, 1980s, tail end of 1986, the legislation finally passed Congress. And part of the promise that was made to federal employees was that this new system was going to be very comparable to the old one, letting people retire at a younger age, being a complete retirement system, even though it's in 3 pieces rather than a single benefit. It was still going to allow someone to retire at a relatively young age and live comfortably, have cost of living adjustments, all of that. And so the other part of it that was supposed to be comparable was the cost. So the old retirement system that my husband retired under required a 7% payroll deduction, 7% employee contribution. So the employee paid in 7% of their pay every 2 weeks. The government paid in 7%. Federal employees didn't pay FICA tax back then.
Yeah, right.
They didn't have a TSP account to contribute to. So that's all they paid was 7%. So FERS comes around and there's nowadays a 6.2% payroll tax for the old age surviving, the retirement part of Social Security. So 6.2. And then there's TSP, which we tell employees save at least 5% of your pay, but we'll give you a 5% match. So that's kind of a wash. And then there's the idea of this FERS pension. So what are we going to charge people for the FERS pension? So Congress said, we want to make things equal. So they said, we're going to charge federal employees a 0.8% contribution. So if you add 0.8 to 6.2 FICA tax, that's 7%, same as CSRS was paying. So that's what it was from 1987 until 2013. And I guess Congress felt like, well, maybe federal employees don't have a good memory to remember that promise that was made.
Yeah.
And of course, federal agencies wanted more money in their budgets as usual. So Congress said, why don't we do this? Why don't we raise the employee contribution to the FERS system, and then we can reduce the amount the agencies have to pay into that system to support their payroll system. So in other words, instead of the agencies paying in 12% and the employee paying in 0.8, now we're going to shift it so that the employee pays in 3.1. How they came up with 3.1, I don't know. But 3.1, and then the agency pays, whatever, 3.1 less of their share. And that went over with flying colors in 2013. Nobody complained about it because it only affected people hired in 2013. So the people already on board were like, phew, we still get to pay the 0.8%.
Right.
So since that went over so well, they called that the FERS RAE, FERS Revised Annuity Employees. So the next year, 2014, same thing happened. Congress wanted to give agencies more money. They said, oh, what can we do? We'll take more money out of the new hires. So they raised that contribution up to 4.4%. So it went from 0.8 to 2.1 to now 4.4%. So if you had the good fortune to be hired in 2014 or later, any time in the last 6 years, you're paying 4.4%. And the sad thing is, these employees who are paying that higher contribution aren't getting any different. In fact, they'll probably end up getting less money in their retirement due to future legislation than what the current employees are going to get for their 0.8% contribution. So if you ask me, that was a very unfair thing for Congress to do, but nobody asked me.
So they literally just said, new hires, you're paying in almost 4 times, but old hires, literally the difference between being hired in 2012 and 2014 is that, that's, we'll just assume the same benefit, but same benefits, you're paying more than that guy hired 2 years previously. Oh.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. So Mia says, husband deceased. She's 50, waiting on spousal annuity or BPA. What are your thoughts on leaving money in I think she means TSP. Can I roll to a Roth? So she's saying, do you think, your thoughts about leaving money in the TSP or IRA, and can she roll to a Roth? Now she will be going to a BPA, obviously. So she can roll to her own IRA, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. That's like you and I both would probably agree that that's what she probably should do.
100%.
Yeah. Now, to roll to a Roth IRA, she's going to have to pay tax on it first. That's a whole different conversation, but she can certainly put it into a traditional IRA. And that way the inheritance of that from her future is going to be a little easier on the kids if they have kids, or on whoever she leaves the money to.
Couldn't agree more. So Mia, for you, it definitely want to roll it to, and I hate to say definitely because we don't know your circumstance, but by and large, you want to roll that to an IRA. Now, whether or not you convert it to a Roth, just be careful, because that's a field strewn with lots of landmines from a tax perspective.
Right.
My man Moon says, Tammy, would you please explain how TRICARE works as when member and spouse age into Medicare / TRICARE for life at different ages? Example, military retiree turns 65, Medicare when spouse is 61. So I that, but TRICARE for life will still cover, or TRICARE will still cover the spouse, right? Until she gets on Medicare, correct?
It will. However, this sounds like this guy's probably a civilian retiree as well, I'm presuming, is why he's asking me that question. So if that's the case, so let's say this is what a lot of people do who retire as a civilian, but they also have retired from the military. So yes, they have TRICARE, they've had entitlement to TRICARE the whole way through, but when they become a federal employee, they can join the federal health benefit program, and many of them do.
Okay.
Some do, some don't. And the reason why some do is because it's like the difference between an HMO and a fee-for-service plan. You know, having the federal health plan, one of the federal health plans along with TRICARE gives you much more freedom to choose different providers depending on what part of the country you live in. TRICARE may or may not be as recognized or as accepted. So they like to have that extra coverage.
So TRICARE would be the HMO in this case, where FEHB is the P. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
And TRICARE always pays second. So if you had both the FEHB plan and TRICARE, then your federal plan would pay first. If there's anything TRICARE covers, they'll pick up a second. Oftentimes they don't pay anything because the federal plan paid more generously. So then comes the dilemma like this person's at, where they're turning 65, right? So now I have my federal plan, I've got TRICARE. My wife has, you know, all three of these or both of these plans as well. So now it sounds like he's turning 65, so he's going to go under TRICARE for life. He no longer needs the federal plan because TRICARE for life and Medicare is wonderful coverage. There's really no need for the FEHB plan at that point, except his wife liked having that extra coverage and she can't have TRICARE for life yet. So he's got to stay in the federal plan until she catches up and turns 65 if he wants her to have that coverage, because he can't just enroll his spouse in the federal plan without him being in it as well. Yeah, so it's a little bit of a dilemma. If he were still working for the government, then he could just delay Medicare and TRICARE for life and just use the federal health plan until he retires. But if he's already retired, he's going to want to join Medicare because, you know, otherwise he'll pay the penalty for late enrollment if he waits 4 years to join. So it's a bit of a dilemma.
But if he joins Medicare, then she doesn't get the federal health benefit.
Yeah, she can still have it. Yeah, she'll still have the federal health plan like she always did. He just has to keep paying for it. He's going to have to pay for self+1 coverage, even though only she's the one who needs it. So he's going to have all three.
He'll still have to pay for his Part B premiums as well on Medicare.
Yeah, so he's going to have Medicare paying first, his federal plan picking up as secondary, and TRICARE for life is like, we don't have to pay anything because the first two took care of the bill. But once she turns 65, then they can suspend the federal plan and just use TRICARE for life and Medicare.
So he'll pay for Medicare Part B for himself. He'll pay for the federal spouse +1 or self +1 for a federal benefit, even though he's literally getting no benefit from that, just to keep her on there.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly.
But still, the option would be she would have nothing. You see what I'm saying?
That's
I mean,
right.
he just,
Or she would have the old TRICARE, which you know apparently they didn't want just the TRICARE Prime because it limited their coverage.
I'm very disappointed in TRICARE. I mean, I don't know the people work there or anything, but I here in Atlanta, I've had retired freaking Silver Star people can't. They get treated worse than Medicaid patients. And that freaking pissed me off, pardon my French. And so I have this one guy in mind, a great guy, he and his wife, they had to move to down your neck of the woods actually, because they could not get service to save their life because they were literally the last on the waiting list. And he had a Silver Star. So he's not a welfare recipient. And if people on Medicare, I'm not bagging it. People got to do what people got to do. But this guy was literally a hero in our country. And I'll never forget, I talked to the wife and she goes, yeah, they basically put me at the back line. That take me off.
See, now you see why some people take the federal plan.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
you put it for some reason, Tammy, the way you said it, I said, I never understood.
Makes sense.
Yes, PPO versus HMO. All right, let's see here. And then we'll get you out here in just a second. If you don't take the survivor benefit on your pension, can you still have your spouse on your federal health insurance plan in retirement?
Yes.
Why not? Yeah, okay.
Well, yes, but there's always a but.
God damn it, kill me.
So yeah, you can always retire on self+1 coverage or self and family if you have kids. But if you die, if you're the retiree and you die and you didn't leave your spouse a survivor benefit, she or he is going to lose you, your retirement, and your health insurance.
Whoa. Okay.
So you have to leave at least a partial. There's an option to leave a partial survivor benefit, which is half as much. So instead of leaving 50%, you can leave your spouse 25% of your first benefit. and that'll cover their entitlement to keep the health benefit. So if they don't need the money, they just need the health insurance, you can do a partial survivor benefit. That'll take care of it.
Whoa. So if you don't take the survivor benefit option to anything, at your death, your spouse is left with nothing from not just the benefit on the annuity, but also on the health insurance stuff.
Yeah. And do you ever try pricing Obamacare right now or affordable health care?
Yes, and I want
at age 60? Yeah.
Oh, mean,
yeah, that could literally cost them $3,000 a month, if not more, depending on their health and their age. Yeah, so you want to leave a survivor benefit if your spouse is not entitled to health insurance on their own.
How about what if you just left as on your TSP? If you left the survivor, no, it doesn't.
No, the health insurance conveys through the government pension, which is the FERS or CSRS retirement. TSP is a whole separate benefit.
Okay. G-Fund makes Michelle nervous. When the federal employees extraordinary measures, they suspend reinvestment in the G-Fund?
Yeah, that's always been the case. That's happened many times since 1987. So there was a provision in the TSP legislation that said that the government, for accounting purposes, on paper, whatever you want to call it, so whenever there's no budget resolution, right? So the government's kind of in this limbo status. So in order to keep the government running, they borrow money from the G Fund, because the G Fund is government securities and it's huge. So they borrow money to keep the government running, keep the payroll going until they resolve the budget resolution, and then the money gets put back whole with any unpaid interest. So they tell us it's nothing to worry about, and they've done it many times since this whole thing started. So it's just a way to keep things going without, like we are right now, living in this frozen society with nothing running.
Well, like I said, if the G Fund ever goes down in value, then that's time to get your to really panic. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of
that's more to worry about than the G Fund.
Yeah, 100% right. I always hear all the time, like, well, if the dollar is gonna go to hyperinflation, all that, what do you think about stocks? I'm like, well, if the dollar goes to hyperinflation, I don't think you're gonna have to worry about stocks. So let's just put it that way, because we're all doomed. Let's see here. Steve, my man Steve, what's up? And he said he showed up late. 20 push-ups, Steve. I will retire at 56, October of this year, Tammy. No plan to withdraw TSP until he's 64, 65. Here we go. Same kind of thing. Should he put his TSP into an IRA? Yeah, the answer, I think we both agreed to that. Most likely, yes. So I'll just answer for you because we just kind of answered that, Tammy. Let's see here. Hold on a second. Oh, I just keep going. Okay, there we go. Well, Herbert says, any thoughts on the best place to retire with a federal government pension? Florida, well, obviously, right? I mean, that's a good place.
There's a lot of federal retirees down here, that's for sure.
Well, Georgia, I tell people all the time, Georgia, the first $65,000 of income, once you're over 65, is tax-free.
That's not bad.
And then
tax on Social Security.
So I'm saying, but if you're a husband, if you're married filing jointly, you get $130,000 of tax-free income in Georgia. Mm-hmm. So everyone says, well, I want to move to Florida or Tennessee. I'm like, don't forget us in the middle.
Georgia's got some beautiful beaches too.
Yeah, and mountains.
The mountains, they got everything. Yeah, Smokies.
You don't want to hear the story that Prairie Mark said. He said, this is a guy who called OPM. They said they sent a certified packet to him and they lost it. They said they got 15,000 packets a day. So that sounds like fun. All right, let's see. I found it, but insurance is voluntary. Okay, hold on just a second. No states in prayer. Just seeing if there's any other questions in here, Tammy. You're well. A benefit to keep TSP around is that you can roll IRA money back in. This is actually a good one. My man Daniel, my Excel spreadsheet guru, he says a benefit to keep a TSP account around is they can roll IRA money back in after you leave service. Could help with backdoor Roth and pro rata rules and take it after done with conversions. I kind of think that's true, but
and I would also say to add on to that if you are like the guy who's going to retire this October, if he does move money out of the thrift, I would leave some money in the thrift so you have a TSP account, because once you close that account, it's done. You can never change your mind and go back into it unless you've left it open And you only need to keep, it's like $200 to keep it
Yeah.
open, but I would keep a few
But
thousand.
you could roll a partial rollout to an IRA. You
Yes.
don't have to
Yep.
go, okay, well, there you
No.
go. Yeah, keep $200 in there and
Mhm.
leave it the G fund and let it sit there forever.
And I've talked to other people too who say if you're using we can't get into this tonight, but the bucket strategy, and I think
Yeah.
that's part of what I quoted you on, because I know you're in favor of that, but you can kind of use your TSP in tandem with an IRA, so you can have maybe your cash money in the G fund that you're
Yeah.
spending,
Yes.
and then your investment money, your stock money in your IRA account, so that you have two separate buckets of money.
So just so I'm clear, if you had $100,000 and you're 50-50 investor, 50 in C and 50 in G, and you want to say, look, I don't want to do the pro rata stuff, so I'm going to move 50,000 out. I can still keep 50,000 in the TSP and the G fund and put 50,000 in the Vanguard Total Stock Index or something like that. You
Yes.
can do partial rollovers to IRAs in the TSP.
Absolutely. Yep.
Oh, that's,
And you can do it more than once. Yeah, you can do it multiple times.
We got a bunch of people saying, Tammy, my man Sam, oh boy, Sam, he's a Navy guy, so don't hold him against it, Tammy. He's I love Sam. He's just a funny guy, but he thinks, do you think the current administration is going to be able to cut our benefits as far as retirement and how much we pay for our medical insurance? So we'll get rid of the current administration part of that, just because Sam and I, we differ politically, but it's all good. But do you think, this is your own opinion, that any administration is going to be able to come and cut benefits and how much we pay for our medical insurance? Do you think that is a possibility that could happen regardless of the politics of it all? What do you think?
I've got a pretty good response to that, because I've been following this stuff since 1985, so it ages me quite a bit. But I've noticed that through the years, as I've been following retirement legislation, and every single Congress, every single administration makes proposals to change things. And there's been some recurring proposals, change the high 3 to high 5, get rid of the cost of living adjustment for retirees, change the retirement age, change the contribution, change anything.
Right.
What I've seen change over the years has mostly been improvements. It's very easy for Congress to pass something that's going to make your life better. Everybody's happy. Yeah, we'll vote for you again. But if I take something away from you, get that bum out of Congress, we're going to have a whole new administration. So it's very hard, between the lobbying efforts and just their preservation. They want to stay in office. Very hard for them to support legislation that's going to change something negatively. So they try their best not to do that. They really don't want to hurt you, because they know, number one, they're supposed to be your congressman, right? And number two, they want to stay in office, and that's why you elected them. So yeah, I don't see any major changes this year, especially since it is an election year. I doubt this administration is going to do something any god awful. However, we're in this crisis. We're getting money falling out of the sky today into our bank accounts. This is crazy. I mean, everything's shut down. We can't go to the restaurant. We can't go to the gym. We can't go anywhere. We're stuck in the house. So this has to have some financial fallout. And I would imagine the insurance industry is going to take some of the brunt of this. Heaven knows they're fighting this COVID virus in the hospitals, at the doctor's offices, setting up these mobile testing stations. Everything's paid for by your insurance. You don't pay a deductible, you don't pay any co-payments, nothing. Somebody's going to pay for this. Yeah. So I would think that, we don't know what the premiums are for our insurance in 2021 yet, but I have a feeling they're going to be higher, and it has nothing to do with who's in office. It has to do with this horrible virus that's infecting our people of the world.
And on top of that, politicians are just like electricity. They go through the path of least resistance, and they always will do what happened with the 0.8 to 3.1 to 4. We'll get those guys who are not voting yet, who don't know they're going to be an employee. And anyone who says like they're going to take away Social Security, I said, just look at the video of Dan Rostenkowski from 1989. I mean, he used to be a House Ways and Means chairman, he's literally the most important guy in Congress other than the president of the United States, because he's the one who writes the bills that get passed, which is House Ways and Means. And he was chased down the street by a bunch of senior citizens because of a very weak proposal on Social Security cost of living adjustments. And it ain't going to happen. Now, what will happen is, we're going to make it like how they change pensions and all that. They always say, we're going to grandfather these people in today, but future people are going to pay more. That's what it's going to be. But the congressmen aren't stupid. They don't want a bunch of, MOA is Military Officers Association. They don't want those guys banging the door anymore. They want federal employees and lobbyists banging the door. They just, I feel like anything could happen. But a lot of people say they love you, Tammy. Even my man Sam says he loves you. And Sam's a good guy. We always just kind of joke on each other in terms of our political leanings. And so thanks, it's Herbert. Thanks for your service to federal employees. My man Moon says, where can we find more info? I'll put links in the show notes, Moon. Obviously, Tammy knows more on this stuff in her pinky than Pablo and I know together. And Pablo is the brains behind the operation. All right, let's see if we got anything else. What would do? Is there the question would be whether you could then sign up? Oh, he's talking to somebody else. Never mind. TSP worked great for me, says Prairie Mark. Thank you, Tammy. Okay, looks like that's it. So, good, Tammy. It's been fantastic. I didn't expect you to be on here this long, but we had a lot of we have 95 people watching right now.
That's crazy. That's great. I'm so happy to be here and happy to have met you just by happenstance. I quoted you in one of my columns, and here we are. So.
Well, then we even get. I'm not going to do it now, but my man Chris, I'm sure a lot of these. Real quick, I promise, last question. Okay. The first supplemental annuity, how is it taxed? Because Chris Barfield now, he said he was telling me all the crazy info that's out there that people don't know. A lot of financial planners, and it pisses them off because they don't know what they're talking about. Yeah. How is first supplemental annuity taxed, if you don't know?
I think the confusion is that a lot of people call it the Social Security supplement. Yes. So they think it's tax-free on the state level and taxed more favorably on the federal level, and that's not true. It's ordinary income is taxed just like your FERS retirement is taxed. So you're going to include that in your taxable income when you file your tax return. OPM will send you a 1099, and the amount of that supplement you got is going to be on there. So yeah, you pay federal tax. If you live in a state that has a state income tax, you're most likely going to pay state tax, unless, like you said, in Georgia, they exempt part of your retirement income. So it depends on how much your income is. But yeah, you'll just.
FERS supplement, though, it is subject to earnings test. I just want to be clear there.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, so if you're working, you might not even get it. You might lose it. And right about now, this is April, so right about now, OPM is sending out the spring surveys every year. In spring, this time of the year, they're going to send out a survey to anyone getting the supplement. And it's going to ask you, what did you earn in 2019? So if you worked after you retired in 2019, you have to report your earned income. So if you earned well above that limit, last year was 17,000 something. So if you're earned above that limit, you could lose that supplement starting in your July retirement payment, or at least it could be reduced. Now, if you stopped working, and you're no longer having outside earned income, then get on the phone and call OPM and tell them when you stopped working. They could reinstate it retroactively to January if you deserve it to be reinstated. All right. So yeah, it's a tricky thing. It is like very confusing benefit, but it's nice that it's still there for the people who get it.
And Tammy, just give us real quick your website where they can find. Well, again, I'll put links in the show notes, but just say your website where they can find and contact you if you don't mind.
Sure, it's retirefederal, one word, retirefederal.com.
Retirefederal.com. Absolutely.
Yeah, we got get info there, so you can reach us that way, and we'll be happy to send you information about our service and fees by just dropping us an email.
And you got a webinar coming up with Mike from Alaska coming up here next week or something like that.
When is it? April 23rd, I think. Let me just look at my calendar to make sure.
And that's free for anyone to sign up and watch?
No, Mike is a financial planner. He charges $47. Okay. Yeah, but you're going to get some good information, right?
Okay. But it's
April 23rd. Yep.
Anyone can sign up. Is just they pay the $47. Okay, gotcha.
Yes, and he has a whole boot camp thing set up, kind of like what you do. And he charges a premium for this. Okay. But it's geared towards federal employees. So
okay, good. No, fantastic. Anyway, just look at Tammy's website. You'll see a pop-up that talks about that.
Yeah.
Tammy, blessings to you, man. This is great. Big hugs to your husband for allowing you this hour and 36 minutes to be online. I will follow up on the email to you to say thank you again. And when I get this video, I'll post it tomorrow. I'll email you the link for it too.
Thanks, Josh. It's been a pleasure talking to you. And if can tell I love what I do, and I can tell you love what you
I
do.
tell you, you're scary how much you know. Even Pablo's like, stay away, Tammy, you know too much.
Hi, Pablo. Give you a little pet.
Thanks.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
See you.
Bye-bye.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.